Beneath the cold limestone valleys of southern Europe, under ancient layers of earth and ice, lie the silent bones of a people who once walked beside us. For more than a century, their image has been painted in shadows, sometimes as primitive hunters, sometimes as tragic remnants of a world long gone. But now, something has changed. Ancient DNA has begun to speak, and what it whispers may overturn everything we thought we knew about where the Neanderthals truly came from. For decades, their origin was a puzzle. Their remains scattered from the caves of Spain to the Siberian steppe. Their story half seen, half imagined. But deep within their cells, in the blueprint of life itself, is a tale that stretches back further than we ever dared to believe. A tale written not in bones, but in code. Tonight, we follow that code. From frozen caves to shifting ice ages, from forgotten valleys to the crossroads of continents, this is not just the story of Neanderthals. It is the story of survival, of migration, of connection, and ultimately, the story of us. The first clues from ancient DNA, the mystery of Neanderthal origins, has haunted scientists for more than a century. Their bones were scattered like fragments of a forgotten book, from the deep caves of Spain to the windswept plains of Siberia. Each fossil whispered of their presence, but none could tell us where their story truly began. That silence began to break with the rise of a new science: ancient DNA analysis. By extracting genetic material from fossilized bones and teeth, researchers unlocked a hidden archive, one not written on stone or bone, but in the delicate molecules of life itself. Suddenly, the Neanderthals were no longer mute relics. They had a voice. An international team of geneticists and paleoanthropologists began piecing together this voice. Fossils from the famous Vindija cave in Croatia, from the frozen soils of Siberia's Altai mountains, and from the mysterious caverns of Spain were examined. Each sample of DNA became a thread in a tapestry that stretched across continents and time. The analysis revealed something stunning. Around 600,000 years ago, Neanderthals split from a common ancestor they shared with us, likely Homo heidelbergensis, who lived in Africa or Eurasia. Yet their earliest genetic signatures hinted at something more complex. The DNA spoke of an even older lineage, one that may have come from the East, from Central or Eastern Asia. Long before they walked the forests and valleys of Europe, this discovery was the first true crack in the mystery. Neanderthals were not simply a European story. They were travelers from older, deeper roots, carrying fragments of a legacy that stretched beyond the horizons of Ice Age Europe. Eastward echoes the Altai Neanderthal. If Europe gave us the first shadows of the Neanderthals, it was the East that gave us their deepest echoes. In the frozen heart of Siberia's Altai Mountains, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal female who lived more than 120,000 years ago. Her bones, locked in permafrost, carried genetic secrets that would reshape our view of prehistory. When her DNA was sequenced, the results were astonishing. Hidden within her genome were signs of interbreeding, not just with other Neanderthals, but with a mysterious human group known as the Denisovans. This discovery shattered the old image of Neanderthals as isolated, static beings. Instead, it revealed a story that looked more like a braided river. Multiple currents of contact, exchange, and migration weaving together across thousands of years. The Altai Neanderthal showed that these encounters were not rare accidents, but recurring events. Populations moved, collided, and mingled. Their bloodlines carried whispers of journeys across vast landscapes, through frozen valleys and windswept mountains. What's more, her DNA revealed connections that stretched eastward into Asia. These genetic signals suggested that Neanderthal roots were not confined to Europe at all, but spread across a vast range from west to east. It meant their true origin was not a single birthplace, but an interconnected world, a prehistoric web of movement shaped by climate, survival, and chance encounters with other humans. The Altai woman's story was proof. Neanderthals were not just inhabitants of Europe's caves. They were wanderers of continents, leaving genetic footprints from the Caucasus to the steppes. Yes, from the valleys of Spain to the heart of Asia. Different bloodlines. East and West Neanderthals. The more researchers listened to the DNA, the clearer it became. Not all Neanderthals were the same. What had once seemed like a single branch of the human family tree was, in reality, a forest of intertwined lineages. In Western Europe, fossils from places like Spain, famous Cima de los Huesos cave, dating back more than 430,000 years, carried a genetic profile distinct from their cousins in the east. These early Western Neanderthals appeared genetically different from the Altai Neanderthals of Siberia. It was as if Europe had hosted multiple waves of migration, each one leaving behind its own imprint in both bone and DNA. Some groups may have been replaced. Others may have mixed and coexisted for centuries. The genetic evidence paints a dynamic picture. Neanderthal history was not a straight line, but a shifting mosaic of populations moving across a vast Ice Age landscape. This insight changed the story dramatically. Instead of imagining Neanderthals as a single, united people spreading slowly across Europe, we now see them as multiple communities rising, migrating, and sometimes vanishing, only to be replaced by others. Their world was one of constant movement, shaped by climate, resources, and survival. The DNA even hinted at deeper connections, traces of genes possibly linked to Homo erectus, an even older human ancestor rooted in Asia. This unexpected signal suggested that Neanderthal origins stretched across continents, pulling their story far beyond Europe's borders. The Neanderthal family tree, once thought to be simple, now looked like a braided crown of branches, overlapping and diverging, sometimes merging back together. Each branch carried a different memory, a different survival, a different story. Climate and survival. How the Ice Ages shaped Neanderthals. To understand the Neanderthals, we must first understand the world they lived in. Ice Age Europe was not a stable land of gentle seasons, but a realm of extremes. Glaciers advanced and retreated like restless giants, reshaping rivers, forests, and plains. Temperatures plunged for centuries, only to rise again, forcing every living being to adapt or perish. For the Neanderthals, climate was not a background, it was destiny. Harsh winters drove them south into pockets of refuge, where caves and valleys offered fragile safety. Then, when the ice retreated during warmer interglacial periods, they expanded northward once more, reclaiming lands now thawed and green. Each cycle was a test of endurance, a challenge to body and spirit. These shifts in climate may have been the silent architects of Neanderthal history. Movements south and north, repeated over millennia, brought different groups into contact. Some merged, some replaced others, and some simply faded into memory. The DNA record preserves these encounters like faint ink on ancient parchment, but survival demanded more than just movement. It demanded innovation. Neanderthals learned to master fire and unforgiving winters, to shape stone into precise tools, to adapt their hunting strategies to herds that migrated as the climate dictated. In the icy breath of glaciers, they became survivors. Not by resisting nature, but by flowing with its cycles. When we see their story through the lens of climate, a truth becomes clear. The Neanderthals were never static. They were resilient wanderers shaped by the rhythm of ice and thaw, and in their struggle against nature's extremes, they carved out one of the most enduring chapters of human survival. Hidden bridges. The Caucasus connection for centuries. The Caucasus Mountains have been called a borderland, a rugged wall dividing Europe from Asia. But for the Neanderthals, this land of peaks and valleys was not a barrier. It was a bridge. In the Mesmiaskaya cave, hidden deep within the Caucasus, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal child who lived more than 40,000 years ago. Her tiny bones carried whispers of a short life in an unforgiving Ice Age world. Yet within her DNA lay a story far larger than herself. Unlike the Neanderthals of Western Europe, her genetic code carried links to populations much further east. The signals in her genome echoed those found in the Altai Neanderthal, thousands of miles away. This meant the Caucasus was not an isolated corner of prehistory. It was a crossroads, where populations met, mingled, and exchanged both tools and genes. The discovery rewrote the map of Neanderthal migration. Instead of two disconnected worlds, east and west, the evidence showed a living corridor, a passage where groups moved back and forth over tens of thousands of years. Each encounter left subtle marks in the DNA, like faint footsteps on a snow-covered trail. the child of Mezmeskaya became more than a fossil. She became proof that Neanderthal history was braided through with connection. The Caucasus was not the edge of their world. It was the beating heart of their journey, a place where Europe and Asia flowed together in the blood of a single child. The legacy within us, how Neanderthals live on. By the time Neanderthals vanished from the fossil record around 40,000 years ago, their story seemed to end. For decades, textbooks portrayed them as the defeated cousins of modern humans, fading into extinction as our species spread across the globe. But DNA tells a different story, one far more intimate. Every non-African person alive today carries, on average, 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. These fragments are not museum relics. They are alive within us, shaping our biology in subtle but profound ways. Neanderthal genes help regulate how our immune systems fight disease. Others influence how our skin responds to sunlight, or how our bodies store fat during times of scarcity. In many ways, Neanderthals did not disappear. They live on in us. Even more surprising, DNA reveals that our contact with Neanderthals was not a single moment, but a long, complex dance. Some interbreeding occurred around 60,000 years ago as humans left Africa, likely in the Middle East. But other signals stretch back even further, over 200,000 years ago, suggesting waves of contact, separation, and reconnection. The picture that emerges is not one of separation, but of entanglement. Neanderthals and modern humans were not strangers, they were neighbors. Sometimes rivals, sometimes companions. Their legacy is carried not just in bones and tools, but in every heartbeat of those who walk the earth today. The final chapter of their story is not extinction, it is inheritance. And in that inheritance, we find a deeper truth. To understand Neanderthals is to understand ourselves. The missing chapters of our own story, the Neanderthals, were once painted as a footnote to human history, a side branch destined for extinction. But as ancient DNA continues to speak, that picture dissolves. What we see instead is a people who endured ice and fire, who crossed mountains and valleys, who mingled with strangers and carried their stories and bloodlines that still flow today. Their origin was never a single point on a map. It was a web stretched across continents, woven by climate, migration, and survival. And their legacy is not buried in caves or locked away in bones. It lives within us, shaping who we are in ways we are only beginning to understand. So when we trace the story of the Neanderthals, we are not only uncovering them, we are uncovering ourselves. In every strand of our DNA are echoes of their resilience, their songs by the fire, their footsteps across frozen earth. They are not gone. They are here, whispering through us. And perhaps that is the lesson. History is never just about the past, it is about connection. To those who walked before us, and to those who will come after. In our next journey, we will follow another ancient trail, this time into the mysterious encounters between Neanderthals and Denisovans, and how their shared legacy still shapes the world we live in today. Stay with us, subscribe to Lost Origins, and let's keep uncovering the missing chapters of our shared human story.